Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm your host, Sherry, and you are tuning into From the Dark Side. Today, we're talking about a 27-year-old woman who vanished while in the middle of a custody dispute with the father of her kids over their two small boys. She will be found, but this story does not have the happy ending we all hoped for. Trigger warning for graphic details about human remains. As always, my sources are listed in the description area. This is episode 104, The Case of Laura Ackerson. This story takes place in 2011. Osama bin Laden was killed in an operation led by the United States. An earthquake and tsunami happened in Japan, and over 15,000 people died. The most popular book was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. There was the premiere of Game of Thrones, which I still haven't watched a single episode. It's one of those shows that I keep saying I'll watch, but I never do. Steve Jobs resigned as Apple CEO because of health issues and was replaced by Tim Cook. And lastly, Google launched Google+. Do you guys remember Google+? It was like their version of basic social media. They ended up doing away with it since the analytics showed that 90% of users were logged on for less than 5 seconds at a time. On July 24, 2011, 60 miles outside of Houston in Richmond, Texas, police are called to a body of water called Oyster Creek. This is a hot, muggy day. The temperatures had reached 97 degrees and everything is very hazy. The creek is green with algae and known to contain alligators. This is not the kind of creek you want to go swimming in or even wading in. But they were informed there could be a dead body here, so they venture out. Fort Bend County crime scene investigator Kim Oroskovich and other crime scene techs get into a small boat and go into the murky waters. One is armed with a large gun in case they have to shoot an alligator. They set out on the small creek and notice there's a film of green covering the water. It's almost shiny. As they slowly move down the river in the boat, they begin to smell decomposition. In the thick vegetation, they find a human torso. Then they find a human leg. They keep searching the next day, hoping to piece this full body together. They believe it belongs to a woman who disappeared 11 days prior. They eventually find a human head, which they thought was a leg at first. Don't ask me how they mistook a head for a leg. Identifying this skull wouldn't be easy from just looking at it. It appears there had been some kind of acid or something corrosive poured over it. The skull was completely exposed and the skin was hanging from the bottom of the jaw. They found another leg 15 feet away. The sheriff said this was the most gruesome crime scene he had seen in 30 years. These human body parts belonged to a 27-year-old woman named Laura Ackerson. Laura Ackerson was born in Hastings, Michigan on April 30th, 1984. Laura's family said growing up there was a lot of fighting between her mom and dad. Their names are Roger and Brenda. I watched an interview with her dad and I really liked him. He seemed like a genuine good guy who loved his daughter so much. He wasn't the perfect dad, and at his older age now he realized that. He admitted that back then when he and Laura's mom, they didn't have the best relationship when Laura was growing up, and the arguing and fighting definitely impacted her life. Roger passed away in 2021. Laura moved to Kinston, North Carolina once she graduated high school and began working as a graphic designer. In 2006, Laura met a man named Grant Hayes. Grant was a local musician, and he and Laura quickly hit it off. She met him at one of his gigs. Grant plays acoustic guitar and sings. He played in bars and coffee shops. I watched a few of his videos on his YouTube channel, and he is a decent musician, not super popular though like he claimed he was. He has a sound that seemed to be inspired by Darius Rucker. I watched some interviews on his YouTube channel that looked like they were done by a friend and not an actual media corporation. He seemed like the most egotistical, narcissistic artist I've ever heard, but Laura saw something in him and they quickly moved in together. Laura and Grant had a quick wedding at the Justice of the Peace, and I'll come back to this part shortly. Laura wanted to settle down and be a mom and a wife. That was her dream. But Grant wasn't really about that life, and he was known to cheat on Laura frequently. He would play his gigs on the weekends and was home most weekdays. This marriage wasn't good, lots of red flags on Grant's part. There was even a time when Grant broke Laura's nose. She also couldn't stay long when she went places, even telling her dad at Christmas time that she had to get back to Grant or else he would send people to come looking for her. Friends and family say Laura lost contact with a lot of them because of Grant. Grant and Laura had two boys, and at the time of this story in 2011, the boys are around 2 and 3 years old. Within a month of their first son being born, Grant went to the island of St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands in order to work on his music career. He had shows lined up there. I say shows, but I'm referring to coffee shops and bars, not stadium arena tours. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with playing in bars. I go to local shows all the time. But Grant's ego and his head were huge, and he would tell people that he was going on this big tour. Laura did not go with him. She was getting ready to move back to Michigan, where her family lives, when she learned that she was 12 weeks pregnant with their second child. Laura's friend would later tell the court that this pregnancy made Laura change her mind about leaving Grant. She decided to stay married to him and give it another shot. Laura then moves to the Virgin Islands to be with Grant. They had their second son in August of 2009. Grant's still not interested in Laura and being a husband. I'm believing that the only reason she stayed with him was to have this family dynamic with the two boys. She wanted them to be raised in a home with both parents, and she just wanted to keep the peace. So she stuck around despite feeling like shit most of the time when he was there. A few months later, Grant and Laura took the boys and went back to North Carolina. Grant doesn't stay with Laura in North Carolina for very long. He instead takes the older of the two boys and he goes to New York to pursue his music career out there. He's not making any progress wherever he goes, so he wanted to try New York next. Meanwhile, Grant is still communicating with a woman he met while in the Virgin Islands, a woman by the name of Amanda Perry. In April of 2010, Laura received a picture from Grant showing he and this Amanda woman had gotten married in Las Vegas. Laura is shocked because there's no way possible he could have married this woman since they were still married. But she pulled out her marriage certificate and saw that Grant never signed it. These past 3 years, she had thought they were married, but they never were. A little more background on Amanda. She has an adult daughter. She is originally from Texas. She tried to make it as an actress, much like Grant tried to make it in his music career, but she didn't get any real roles except some very small parts in The Stepford Wives, The Sopranos, and Dexter. Most were uncredited, non-speaking roles. Amanda had inherited some money, I'm not sure from where, but she had lots of money and around $70,000 worth of jewelry. I'm thinking maybe Grant was using her so she can help fund his stalled career. Grant and his new wife, Amanda, moved back to North Carolina, this time settling in an apartment in Raleigh. This is around 90 minutes from Kinston, where Laura was living. On June 29, 2010, the Lenoir County District Court gave an order that Grant and Amanda would be given custody of Grant and Laura's children. Grant claimed that Laura was mentally unstable. Laura accused Grant of substance abuse. Both Laura and Grant had to undergo psychological examinations, which were ordered by the court. According to WRAL News, Laura had told her best friend that Grant had some issues himself, such as he believed he was comparative to the main character in 6 Degrees of Separation and the talented Mr. Ripley. She also said he believed aliens ran the country and he was their chosen person hailed by beings from outer space. Laura wrote in her diary, quote, "Grant is an abusive person and I don't want to underestimate his potential for damaging behaviors. He has zero moral values and he used his children as social currency. He sleeps with women to get what he wants and lies about everything from his marital status to what he ate for dinner. Grant wants me out of the picture. He wants to raise the boys to be what he hasn't achieved yet. Grant and Amanda have custody of the boys Monday through Friday, and Laura gets the boys on the weekends. Laura goes along with it, but she has plans to fight this. She's just dealing with it for now. But she is going to do everything in her power to get those boys back. It's hard though, since now he has this wife who is giving him unlimited amounts of money and spending tons of money on lawyers. This custody agreement went on for about a year. Laura would make the hour-and-a-half drive each way and pick up the boys every weekend and return them to Grant and Amanda Sunday night. Laura kept her apartment the same as when the boys lived there full-time. All the boys' toys and clothes stayed right where they were. Their photos hung on the fridge. If you walked into Laura's apartment, you would think 2 toddlers lived there full-time. Meanwhile, Laura is working on her career with the goal of being able to get custody of her kids again. Laura and her friend Siobhan Mathis start their own graphic design business. It's called Fork and Spoon. Have you ever gone to a diner or a restaurant and the menu has advertisements for local businesses on it? That's what they did. Laura would go to the restaurant and meet with the owner to match advertisements for their menu. It was going really well. Laura did a lot of the talking to the business owners. Laura and Siobhan had this deal that when Laura came out of the meeting each time, she would call Siobhan and check in and tell her how it went. Most times she got an okay from the restaurant owner. Her clients all said she was a great person who was well put together and professional. She did great as a salesperson. Laura and Grant's new wife, Amanda, do not get along whatsoever, but it seemed like it was one-sided. Amanda didn't like Laura, but Laura tried to remain civil and not be her friend, but be cordial in front of these 2 toddlers. Laura wrote in her diary in August of 2010, "She told me that she was responsible for my kids now because I'm psycho crazy, and I'm certain that Grant has given her the scenario that I'm this wacko and that he needs her to help him protect the kids from me." 1 month later, she wrote, "Grant has gotten Amanda so worked up towards me that instead of now giving me a report on the kids, she looks at me with disdain. They act as though I don't exist. I have done nothing wrong to Amanda." But by July 12th, 2011, Laura seemed to think things were getting better because she received an email from Grant proposing something he had never done before. He asked her, "Why don't you come by my apartment tomorrow evening and you can take the boys out to Monkey Joe's?" Monkey Joe's is a play place for children with bouncy houses and slides and ball pits. He said that he had a friend that worked there and could get them in without charge. Laura is thrilled for this visit because it's a Wednesday and she hasn't gotten to see the 2 boys midweek before since this custody agreement began over a year before. Grant and Amanda were very stingy with the boys and only allowed her what the courts required. Laura may be thinking this has something to do with the fact that Grant and Amanda had a new baby of their own. Amanda had given birth to a little girl just 1 month ago. Maybe they needed a break for a couple of hours. As well, the big custody hearing was just 1 month away, which would be August 15th. Perhaps he knows he is going to lose, and at this point he just doesn't care. Laura emphatically replies, yes, she will be there right after work. Laura meets with a client the next day, which is July 13th, 2011. They shake hands and seal the deal, and Laura is on her way. She's got to make an hour-and-a-half trip that evening to Grant's house, so she wants to wrap up work early. She calls her friend Oksana and leaves her a voicemail asking if she wants to meet up around 7 p.m. once she returns the boys after their outing. She sends Grant a text message at 4:12 p.m. that read, "I'm leaving the Wilson area now. I'll call when I get past the traffic. Where will you be in an hour or so?" She doesn't get a response, so at 4:59 p.m. she pulls into the Crabtree Mall and calls Grant. This was the last time we have proof of life from Laura. That voicemail to Oksana about meeting up at 7 p.m., Oksana says she never showed up. At 9 p.m., Laura's business partner Siobhan was supposed to receive a call from Laura. They had planned to have this call at exactly 9 p.m. to discuss business. But Siobhan said Laura never called her. She waited around and didn't hear anything. Siobhan grows increasingly concerned over the next couple of days because Laura isn't answering her phone. Siobhan even sends her an email that says, "If you lost your phone, let me know. I'm getting worried. If I don't hear from you by tomorrow, I'm contacting the police." Siobhan was hoping that Laura had just lost her phone and she could check her email through her laptop and see that she's worried about her. Siobhan does exactly what she said she was going to do. She goes into the police department the next day and gives them the story. She tells them, "My friend and business partner may be missing." They learn about the ugly custody dispute and how much his new wife hates her, and police take her worries seriously. And on July 18th, 2011, Laura is officially a missing person. This was 5 days since she was last seen. The first thing they do is go to Laura's apartment in Kinston. They see it as clean, but had lots of kids' stuff around. They noticed her plants were dying, like they hadn't been watered in a week. They checked the apartment's surveillance cameras, and the last time Laura was seen there was July 13th at 8:30 a.m. when she is leaving in her 2006 white Ford Focus to go meet with a client. Police get in touch with Grant and want to know about the last time he saw Laura. He says on Friday, July 15th, and as a side note, this is 2 days after her visit to Monkey Joe's with the boys that we don't even know if she made it to. He says at 5 p.m. he waited at the Sheetz gas station with the boys where they always do the visit exchange, but Laura never showed up. In fact, he was upset with her for not showing up and that this proves how unreliable she is. The surveillance footage backs this up that he was there waiting with their 2 little boys. He sends her angry text messages and accuses her of ghosting him. He also sent her an email saying he had nothing more to say to her. Police receive a tip that Laura's 2006 white Ford Focus had been located. It's at an apartment complex in Raleigh, North Carolina. This car was found abandoned just 400 yards from Grant and Amanda's apartment. Police get to the car and nothing obvious stands out to them. There's no blood or anything in the trunk. They get a search warrant for Grant and Amanda's apartment. The reason for this is because they had called Grant and asked if they could meet with him, and he said no since he was out of town. Police open the door and are overwhelmed by the smell of bleach. It was almost unbearable. There's a large bleach stain right inside the door on the carpet. They move through the apartment and into the bathroom where they say it is much cleaner than the rest of the house. The bathtub was in pristine condition and missing its shower curtain. They find a handwritten note that says Laura will give up custody of her 2 boys in exchange for $25,000. The note appeared to be signed by Laura, but it was likely forged since family and friends all agree Laura would never under a million circumstances give up custody of her children. She had been fighting for over a year and was so close to getting them back anyway. The big custody hearing was going to be August 15th, which is just 1 month away, and things were going in Laura's favor. Police also found a user manual for a new reciprocating saw. They check with the Walmart a few miles away and learn Grant bought the saw on the morning of July 14th. This was the day after Laura was supposed to pick up the boys to go to Monkey Joe's. He also purchased gloves, and 2 days later he purchases ice and multiple coolers. Police also found some lyrics to a song Grant had written in one of the bedrooms in the apartment, but it was a music studio instead. The lyrics read, "Give in to me, I want it all. I want your scream and I want your crawl. I'll make you bleed, fall to the floor, don't try to plead, that turns me on. I'll take the keys to your car and some more. As the dogs come, try to walk them over. Start your line there, right around her shoulder. As her mom and dad come, walk them away, tell them she died fast, they'll know she wasn't in pain. I'm not the one to make you scream, I'm just the one to make you bleed. Don't raise your arms, you can't stop me. I'll put my hands on your throat and squeeze. Hallelujah. Truly a Grammy-winning song right there. So we got a saw, a missing shower curtain, bleach everywhere, gloves, new coolers. You guys know what's happening here. Grant rents a U-Haul and tells Amanda's adult daughter that he, Amanda, and the 2 boys and the 1-month-old have to make a trip to Richmond, Texas, where Amanda's sister lives. They rented a U-Haul so they could deliver a piece of furniture. He told the employees at the U-Haul rental facility that he and his wife and kids were going to Texas for a fishing trip and that he needed the U-Haul to transport coolers full of fish bait. The coolers get loaded into the back of the U-Haul and off they go on an 18-hour trip to Texas. They arrive the morning of July 18th. Grant goes to Home Depot and purchases gloves, a large trash can, and muriatic acid. He told the cashier that it was to clean out a pig pen. Amanda's sister Karen lives right next to Oyster Creek. Oyster Creek is very narrow and super murky, especially because temperatures were in the 90s. Grant and Amanda ask Karen about alligators. She says, yes, the water is infested with alligators. It's super dangerous out there. Then they ask if they can borrow her boat. Karen is picking up on the fact that something is very odd. They show up with a U-Haul with 2 little boys and a 1-month-old girl. They're acting sketchy as hell. They're asking about alligators, and then once they learn there is indeed alligators in the water, now they want to borrow the boat. Karen pulls her sister Amanda to the side and asks, what is this all about? Amanda stated that she hurt Laura real bad. According to WRAL, they went outside and Grant comes over asking if there was a big hole somewhere on the property, like a well or something like that. Karen tells him, no, I don't have a big hole in my yard. Karen says, quote, sometime during that time, I told them that it was my belief that if something was really, really bad, it would be best to tell the truth, and that I knew an attorney we could go talk to if they needed an attorney. Amanda didn't offer any more details about what happened to Laura, and Karen didn't want to ask. Raleigh, North Carolina police learned that Grant and Amanda had went to her sister's house in Texas, and they make their way there, taking them 18 hours to drive. The couple were already gone by the time they got to Texas. The couple had went back to North Carolina, but not to their apartment. Instead, they went to Grant's parents' house. The Raleigh, North Carolina police go to Karen's house, and Karen tells the officers that she's been expecting them. They sit down with her, and she asks if she's allowed to pray before they get started. Then she tells them what her sister Amanda told her, that she hurt Laura real bad. Then they wanted to take her boat out to go fishing, and that they also asked if there were alligators in the water. Police make their way to Oyster Creek directly behind Karen's house, and a huge search team is dispatched. They also obtain surveillance footage of Amanda dumping out large bottles of muriatic acid. They find various body parts, including Laura's head. They noticed it was more decomposed than the rest of the body. So we learned that Grant and Amanda had tried pouring that muriatic acid on her in order to dissolve the body, but when that didn't work, they decided to dump her in the water and hope and pray that the alligators would take care of the rest. After Laura was killed, Grant emailed and texted Laura and even showed up to the Sheetz gas station to pretend like he was waiting for her to show up and pick up the boys. He's creating alibis for himself. On July 25, 2011, a SWAT team entered the house of Grant's parents, and Grant and Amanda were arrested for the murder of Laura Ackerson. Laura's official cause of death was homicide by undetermined means. Dr. Deborah Radish, who is the state's medical examiner, stated there was signs of strangulation and a puncture wound to her neck. Because the remains were so deteriorated, she couldn't determine which one of those methods killed her, so she had to rule it homicide by undetermined means. Grant and Amanda will be tried separately. The prosecution says that both of them killed Laura. Then they dismembered her body using a power saw Grant had purchased the next morning, loaded her into coolers, drove her to Texas, attempted to dissolve the body parts with muriatic acid, And when that didn't work, they threw her remains in the alligator-infested waters with hopes that the alligators would take care of it. During Grant's trial, an inmate by the name of Pablo Trinidad gets called to the stand as a witness, and he has a story to tell. While Grant was awaiting trial, a TV in the Wake County Detention Center had the news playing, and inmates are watching it. The news runs a story about Grant's case, and the other prisoners now know what he is in for, and they are getting ready to attack him. But a guy named Pablo stepped in to defend him. As a thank you to Pablo, he says Grant confessed to him what he had done. He says Grant told him he lured her to his apartment under the pretense that she could have the boys for a midweek visit. But while she was there, he and his wife strangled her, dismembered her body, and then took a road trip to get rid of the remains. Grant's attorneys challenge Pablo's story. The story makes sense to us, but they believe Pablo was using Grant as a meal ticket. You give up information like that, you can have your sentence reduced, and Pablo was facing 100 years in prison for charges of conspiracy to deliver 5 kilos of cocaine, 6 counts of distributing cocaine, and 1 count of felony possession of ammunition. Grant's attorney asks if this was the same information he saw on the news. Pablo replies no, that all he knew was that Grant had a murder charge and that's it. One of Grant's songs was played in court, the one about killing a woman, and Grant bobbed his head along to it, and the jury didn't like that at all. Grant pleaded not guilty, even with all the evidence stacked against him, but ultimately Grant was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now let's move on to Amanda's trial. The prosecution alleges that Amanda was jealous and resentful of Laura since she had 2 kids by this man who is now her husband. She was also tired of Laura continually fighting for custody of the boys. She just wouldn't give up. Amanda wanted to be their mom and not Laura. They say Amanda is the one who ultimately killed Laura, but Amanda's lawyers say this isn't it at all. They say Amanda didn't know Grant had killed Laura until she came home. They say Amanda was roped into helping dispose of the body because Grant threatened to kill her if she didn't. The jury did not find Amanda guilty of first-degree murder. Instead, they convicted her of second-degree murder. Even though she had confessed to her sister that she was the one who, quote, hurt Laura real bad, they couldn't prove that this was premeditated. She was given 13 to 16 years and could be out of prison as early as 2025. However, in 2018, this is 4 years after she was sentenced, Amanda found herself back in court, this time for tampering with evidence in Laura's death. Remember the surveillance photos of Amanda dumping muriatic acid out? For this charge, Amanda was given an extra 20 years in prison, but the judge allowed it to be ran concurrent with her current sentence of 13 to 16 years. So she ultimately only wound up with a 20-year sentence maximum for both charges, second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. The last I read was that the 2 boys, along with Grant and Amanda's infant daughter, went to live with Grant's parents. The 2 boys are around 15 and 16 today, and the little girl is 13. Laura's dad, Roger, passed away in 2021, but before this, he tried to fight for custody, and they ended up staying with Grant's parents. Before he died, he told the Sentinel-Standard that Grant Hayes knew he would be losing custody 1 month later when the court hearing would take place, saying he couldn't stand losing custody and he'd have to pay child support. He had just married another woman and had a baby who was a month old. He's been in prison since his arrest. Laura is buried in Tuttle Cemetery in her home state of Michigan. A book about Laura's murder, written by Diane Fanning, called Bitter Remains, was published in January 2016. Shout out to Laura's friend Siobhan, who knew something was wrong and reported her missing. With Laura not having any family in the area at the time, who knew how long it would be before someone noticed that she was gone? All Laura wanted was custody of those 2 boys. She didn't care about Grant and his new wife. She was done with them. She was instead fighting an uphill battle to get those kids back, and she was so close. I hope those 2 boys know just how much their mom loved them. This poor girl didn't deserve to die in the horrific way that she was killed. Rest in peace to Laura Ackerson. That's it for this week, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care, and much love to you all. Intro music is Feral Angel Waltz, which is composed by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons. All his music can be found on his website, incompetech.com.